Is it recording?
Can't tell.
Yes? Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to SCBWI Arizona E&I. Before we start, we like to read our E&I statement. As a reminder, SCBWI has a policy of supporting diversity and inclusion. This is a place we set aside for kidlit creators and translators to meet, exchange ideas, and support one another in our efforts to bring great books to all children. Part of the reason we do this is so they can see themselves and others reflected in their lives. We specifically focus on the art, craft, and business of publishing and try to keep on topic so everyone gets the most value from our time together. If you have any questions about this, please see the anti-harassment policy posted on the SCBWI website. Thank you. And we are so excited to have Violet Duncan here today. Violet is a Plains Cree and Taino from how do you say that? Kehewin Cree Nation. As an accomplished author, educator, dancer, and storyteller, she has toured both nationally and internationally, sharing her talents in promoting wellness and cultural education across the US, Canada, and Europe. After becoming a mother of four and seeing the need for greater Native representation in literature, Violet authored 3 picture books and a middle grade novel, Buffalo Dreamer, which I have right here, which was longlisted. Oh, thank you. Longlisted for
No, I was wrong.
longlisted for the 2024 National Book Award for Young People's Literature and recently won the YMA American Indian Youth Literature Award in the middle grade category. Thank you so much for being here, Violet. I will turn it over to Susan and Violet. The peanut egg sauce. You can adjust it.
See. Hello. Thank you for coming, Violet. I'm Susan Foss, the head of E&I, and this is Violet, of course. And thank you, Karen, for the lovely introduction. For those of us, or for those of you who don't know, this is a redo interview. We attempted and somewhat successfully talked with Violet virtually. Oh yes, excuse me, technical stuff.
Yeah.
Did that work? Perfect. Okay. So as I was saying, we had a part of a lovely discussion with Violet back in November for Native American Heritage Month. So we're trying again. So thank you for coming again. Yes. It's much appreciated. So I am going to start out by asking you about your book again. I know you told us last time, but for those who are new, and just as a refresher, even for those who attended last time, would you tell us about your book, Buffalo Dreamer, please?
Yeah, here, I'm gonna take the
Sure, yeah.
of the cover. Yeah, drag it across the table. Buffalo Dreamer is a middle grade novel that follows main character Summer as she goes up north into her community. And on her way there, like we do every summer, she notices that there is a lot of commotion at the Indian residential school that her mushum attended, her grandfather. And at the same time, she's having these really intense dreams of a young girl running away from what we perceive as the residential school. And we kind of follow both journeys as Summer is learning about what this means and the anguish that this young girl is going through in her dreams. And she feels like this feels a lot more real than my other dreams. And then we also figure or witness Indigenous joy on the res, and we see sweetgrass picking and we see berry picking. And then she confronts her grandfather about the Indian residential school, because what I noticed is my children don't know much about the Indian residential school system. And when, so that's the book. I'll go off course now and just talk about my quick inspiration for it is in 2021. We were all still hunkering down in the pandemic, and we learned about the 200 unmarked graves, 215 unmarked graves in BC at the Kamloops Indian Residential School. And the children there, they were guessing from the sizes of the the unmarked graves were between the ages of 4 years old up to 12. And at that time, I had my baby who was 4, and then I had an 8-year-old and an 11-year-old and a 12-year-old, and we were all figuring out remote learning and being kind of really in their business and learning how to navigate the household with everyone in it as we learn and grow and cook and clean, and then dealing with this. And we were actually on the res when this came to light, and they would say, like, "What's wrong, Mom? What's going on? Why are you?" Because I would be trying to not cry, but I'd be reading about them, and I was reading when there was 50 seen and 75 and over 100, and finally the number stopped at 215. And I'm like, okay, we need to talk about this with the kids. And when we did talk about it, I would definitely say, like, my dad, their mushum, their grandfather attended a school like this. And my auntie, who they would call their cookum, their grandmother, I know we use auntie a lot in Native communities, but with my auntie, it would be like their great aunt. So she would just be moved up the hierarchy to grandmother. So they would notice their other grandfathers and grandmothers had attended the school, and they were being really cautious about asking, how did they go? Why did they go? And what happened there? Why are there unmarked graves? And what is that? And what does that mean? And so as I was navigating talking about this and trying to be historically accurate, I'm Googling and I'm seeing what the heck this dig, like, is it a dig? And we found out it's sonar. It's like a ground penetration where you can see into the ground where different movements happened, and you can kind of make shapes out if there was bodies, and if they correlated to the story about people saying kids were buried here. So there was like a lot of layers. And so as I was talking to my kids about it, I started to write, and I started to write from a young people's perspective in learning. And I definitely, to protect my heart, I had to go out on the land. And so me and the kids would go horseback riding or berry picking. And the same way that I was unfolding this history in the book, I had to do the same thing of caring for my readers' hearts and minds.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Wow.
Really good balance.
Yeah, it's incredible. So, remind me, I know you discussed this last time, but your Native heritage is it centered entirely in Canada then?
No. So my dad is Plains Cree from Kehewin Cree Nation, and then my mom is Taino. So she comes from Santiago de Cuba.
Okay.
And she came over to the United States when she was 5 years old. So she was born and raised until 5 in Cuba. And then she came, I think, Erie, Pennsylvania. There's
Okay.
like a community there. So she was there, and then she went to the Center for Indigenous Theatre, CIT, in Toronto, Ontario, Canada,
Okay.
where she met and fell in love with my dad. And so they are like couple of artists and dancers, and they have big open hearts and big open minds, and they were just kids when they met. So they had a lot of adventures, and then of course my sister and my brother and me and my little sister came along, and it's just always been a whirlwind of fun. And they are social justice warriors, so their arts is centered in social justice, and so that's kind of where I also feel my center is understanding that we are all different, that we all come from unique spaces and places, and writing from our own space is really, really good in the long run as we kind of learn to live together and amongst each other, that it's a safe place to pick up a book and to put it down as you're learning about other community before you kind of enter into those spaces, especially.
Right, yeah. In our last chat, you had mentioned too how much of an inspiration your community was and how you draw from the creativity that they provide. I remember because I know you also have some picture books as well.
Yes.
That you had mentioned that you had wanted more Native representation for children in general, and that your nieces and nephews first were the inspiration before you had your children. And that the two examples I remember is that you want to just show large extended family groups and sort of this may seem strange, but men with long hair and braids.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I found that really interesting that those were two cultural markers that you wanted to showcase.
Yes. So picture books have always been my jam. As an adult, I love and adore, especially when the illustrator and the author come from that background, because then we really get the authentic experience with color and with language and with syntax and how they choose to express that. So I love picture books. This is my first middle grade novel, so don't judge me entirely off of this one. I was doing judgment. So I would have to say my very first picture book started in grade 3. I got to be what's it called? Like when you partner with a grade sixer who was like
Like a
really
buddy.
cool. Yeah, I was like, oh, and the school only went up to grade 6, so they were like the coolest kids you could ever. And we got to partner with them, and they do the illustrations, and I wrote the story, and it was called Twinkle the Rabbit. And it was my rabbit that I had that would twinkle when you would shake it. And I wrote this amazing story, and I was like, this is the best story ever. The cool kid is going to illustrate it. And I still can't draw. So when I saw my book come to life, I was like, this is it. This is the coolest thing. Somebody understood what I was saying and through words and added illustration to it. And they just did it like, I don't know where that book is now, but I remember it's massive and it was laminated and it was like put together, binded with yarn. And I was so impressed. And ever since then, I've been hooked to writing stories, and mostly scary stories were my thing when I was like in elementary school. And then I tried poetry. I feel like my poetry reads or leans into short stories. That's what they kind of turn into, where I'm like, how about this one? And it's like a little short story. So I can't stop going. Nice try. You tried, yeah. Yeah. So I mean, once you figure out what you like, you can, it's such a good bouncing off place.
Yes.
So then when I had my nieces and nephews, I had them. No, that's how close I am with my, yeah. Because I mean, even in Native culture, uncles and aunties are like a more
Yes.
like an outreach than mom and dad.
Mhm.
You know, so it's okay to drop off your kids with the cousins and uncles and nephew or uncles and aunties. And everyone's always around anyways. And so even when I'm going to the lake, I'll have like a couple random kids and I'm like, wait, did you tell your parents? Like they're like, I told Mike cook them and mush them, and I'm like, okay, so somebody knows.
Yes.
And then we'll all meet at the lake anyway. And so they're like, oh, good, you brought so and so. And now in the era of texting and phone calling with our phones, it's so much more peace because I don't know how my parents did that. Just were like, wait, where's Jody and Violet?
Who knows, right?
It was a different time.
For sure.
So I'm like making sure that there's a video, there's a photo, we're texting, we are alive and here, and everybody feels better. But so that was like finding good. Oh, wait, admit, is that someone else?
Yeah, we got it.
I'm admitting now.
Perfect. Thank you.
So finding books, well, it started with like what did I want to give when my sister was pregnant with her son? What did I want to give this little human being? And I found to me it was, it was a book. I wanted them to read it and to look at it. And so I think it was a rabbit book that came with a rabbit stuffy. And I remember he was eating the book and everything, but he's like a little guy, and I was like, yes, this is how the beginnings of a book lover is. It comes from humble beginnings, and I remember I loved that. And so when my niece came along, she's a singer, and so I would tell her a story, and she would be able to kind of sing song it.
Yeah.
And I was like, you're so cool. And I loved kind of hanging out with them and looking like their minds and how they experience the world for the first time. And so when I had kids, I was like, you can never go back. And it was an exciting time, especially my very firstborn. We wanted to get her all the books. And so when we went for literature, especially board books when they're little, There was only so many. There was actually only three. And one, actually, none of them, we found out that most recently we found out that this one board book is not written by a Native person. So all three dealt with Native content, but they were not Native writers or illustrators. And so then we went on to bigger books and eventually chapter books. And yeah, it became really difficult to find stories that came from our experience, that sounded like us, that looked like us, that had uncles and dads, and not just long hair, it's even how it's styled, two braids, one braid, one ponytail, loose. And for my sons, I have two of them, to see themselves reflected. It's so hard to go to kindergarten and grade one when nobody has long hair, and then you're a girl if you have long hair, and so we come into the school and we're like, did you know Thor has long hair? You know, we hate like this guy with the hammer. Did you know Santa Claus has long hair?
Right.
So we had to like bring in these modern characters. It's actually not my idea, it was my husband's. But I recognize that it's not just for like families, it's us, and it's my nephew and my sons and my daughters and my nieces. And then my latest self-published book, I Am Native, that one has a few different things going on. There's hoop dancing and power dancing and putting up a teepee. And I remember I got my cookum in there, my grandmother, and she was like, there's me. And she had the page open. And I noticed in that moment that, oh my gosh, she hasn't seen herself in this beautiful, joyous light. And I realized like, oh my, it's not just our kids, it's our grandparents, it's moms and dads, and those aunties and uncles to take pride in that relationship if they don't have children. Because I always want to celebrate my little sister who's like the auntie that doesn't have her own biological children. She now has children, her adopted children. But before, when she was an auntie, I wanted to show her how proud I was of her role. And the only way I could do that is through stories and say like that. This person is you. This is you. This is how I would write you. And because I wanted to say in my own way, thank you. Thank you for being there. Thank you for showing up. It's hard as a parent, and I can't imagine somebody doing this when the kids aren't you. Because I know how I was when I was an auntie. It's so hard to leave and go to school and go to work, and you know, you have this love and connection to this kid, and you're like, don't grow up too fast, you know, I'll be back. But you know, when they're my own kids, they're always all around, like literally just today, like I'm brushing my son's hair and my kid is right here talking to me, and I'm like, I have a kid in front of me, I have this kid glued to me, and then my husband's telling me something, and I'm like,
so much.
Just this, take it all in. And like I the only way to remember that is like if I write it and I explain that moment. Or I love to hear about it when other people write that, and how I'm like, yes, I'm not alone, and and relishing my alone time. That is not bad, it's rest.
Yes, yeah, truly a universal experience.
Yes.
All right, so I know you mentioned it briefly, and you talked a little bit more about your writing journey. Do I remember correctly? You started in self-publishing around 2010, and you made the jump to traditional publishing in 2020. And rather than have you sort of rehash that all again, I was wondering if you could speak about if you had any significant challenges, specifically as a Native American writing or publishing, and if you did, how did you overcome them?
So, see, that is it is a tricky way, because without offense, I say I am Plains Cree and Taino, and those are my nations and my tribes. And I have a hard time saying First Nations, Native American, American Indian, because there are over 1,000 different tribes and nations. And so when we talk about experience, that's where I'm coming from, is that nation or tribe. And so when I write, I try to not have like an intertribal experience or an internation, or something that says I'm speaking for all of us, that this is intimately my experience. And so when I am writing, I try to make sure that who is my audience? And I imagine my grandparents and my parents and my children and my community. And would they be proud of this story? And I mean, some content, especially if you're writing nonfiction, you have to speak truth to that.
Sure.
And fiction, and you have to speak truth to yourself. But definitely as a Plains Cree and Taino author, that was probably my only wall, is saying, who am I being authentic to make sure I'm being accurate to myself. And when I did reach out to, so in self-publishing, that's where I started, that
Okay.
this is for my children. This is what I needed. And instead of making a book called like Native American or American Indian stories, I tried to keep it as, this is me, the author, who's Plains Cree and Taino. And then as I went into the world of publishing, my editor, we had to make it really clear of this is how I want it, the language use in it, and how we're going to use mushum throughout. And I remember her saying, well, there might be people who don't know who mushum, what that means. And I was like, what? Because I'm so in my,
Right.
I'm in my community that I'm like, what do you mean? They don't know who mushum is. And so that's where I want to keep that space. I want to think that everybody knows what I'm talking about, and I don't have to explain constantly what beads are, beadwork, what moccasins, where we use them, mushum, hukum, that I want to speak as though I'm speaking to my community and not have to explain everything. But my editor shows up and she helps me ground it and recommends, like, let's have it definitions and get everybody on board. And in this book, I have quite a bit of Cree and some Cree slang in here. My next book has a lot more, because now I'm like, oh, we can do that. So I'm so excited. Yeah, I'm like, now that I know we can use the bigger words and the more longer phrases. Now that I know I have a team that supports that translation effort, it just makes me a lot more free. So in that way, when you kind of stick to who you are and decide, this is how I'm going to do it, I definitely feel that there was a lot more freedom instead of finding a wall. And I think, well, I know, thanks to my editor, Nancy Paulson, for just being open to the idea of, or suggesting the idea of definitions, and suggesting we don't need to explain this. This is already said here. And I'm like, thank you. It's so much better when I could just stare and say the way I would naturally, instead of constantly having to, because in other books I read, it's up to the reader to understand what different spaces are, especially if they're like religious spaces. We don't have to say this religious area, this is where you XYZ,
Right.
if you want to know, there's the dictionary. And then we can, and that makes you a better reader.
Right.
Exactly.
We don't know what fantasy terms are, but
Yeah.
we just context clues and figure
Exactly.
it out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
same with a language.
Absolutely. I love that. And then even that world building just makes me more excited to read other people's work, because then we could see what is going on in your head, like how did you create this world? And for me, this is not even imagining, I'm just kind of mirroring what's happening in my community. So I have it super easy. I just want to share with the world how amazing people are in my community and how amazing my kids are and my mom and dad. And it turned into a bit of like, now I know my writing and I'm like, ooh, I actually do that a lot. So in my next couple middle grades coming out, that is my style, that I'm constantly using our things that happen, because sometimes they're so incredulous that I'm like, nobody would ever believe that this happened. And so I need to write this down because it's stranger than fiction. And so when I write it, I'm like, I can't wait for somebody to say, did that really happen? And I'll be like, yes. Like dying. So yeah, so I love it. I love recounting my own experiences.
Yes, yeah, that sounds very satisfying. You're like, yes. Can you believe it? That's true. So, I had So usually the next question I ask people is, what resources or techniques do you use when writing about diverse characters, especially those who are different from you? But it sort of sounds to me like that doesn't really apply or hasn't applied yet to your works.
Not yet, yeah,
Okay,
not
yeah.
yet. I definitely, I would like to say that in my writing, I love to like just observe just what is happening and how that affected someone. And I love to see what's happening in other people's worlds. And so, especially my children, because they can give me their raw emotion of like, I really didn't like that because XYZ. And I'm like, oh, I did not see that coming. And then it makes me kind of go deeper into my thought process of, wait, I was also uncomfortable.
Sure.
Why, let's explore that a little bit. Or actually, I really love that. Why did we love that so much? And so that is how I go into characters. But more importantly, I'm in a world of theater and performing arts, and my parents were, like I said, they worked in the theater. And my mom, when she was completing her master's, she had a few plays that she was able to do. And so I had speaking lines. I think my earliest speaking line was like grade 4. And it was like a good character that would come throughout. And so by the time I was like in grade 8, I had real speaking lines, and you had to get into character. And my parents would teach about getting into character and getting out of character. And it was really important to do both, because some of these characters, like I said, they were social justice. So we would be talking about abuse and alcoholics or substance abuse. We would be talking about suicide. And these were heavy, deep topics, but because we knew how to develop the character and come out, when I'm using these characters like Musham or the summer or autumn, that's what I was doing in my writing, is I would be getting into that character and kind of seeing like how she would stand and walk and what her thought process would be, and then coming back out of that character. And I really think that helped me kind of stay into character to give an authentic response. And I know I read the negative reviews,
Oh no,
which are not the best thing to do, but
Oh,
someone
no.
said, these people are all too happy. Why is everyone so behaved and so happy in this book? It's not
What a
realistic.
strange criticism.
It was really strange. And there was also somebody actually did bring up that there's a lot of substance abuse on the res. How come that was not brought up? And I have to say is, when I was going into these characters, as a parent, me and my husband and my whole family, we really commit to keeping them in a safe space. And so we do realize that there is substance abuse, that there is physical abuse, that there's a lot that happens, but we do a lot to make sure that our babies feel safe. And so anyone who comes to my parents' house, it's a safe place to be. Even if you were partying the other weekend, you can come to her house and have a dinner and not be judged by what you were doing last weekend or what you're going to do tonight. That this place, you have respect and we respect you. And so that everyone is happy. I'm like, good. That was the point, because that's how it feels at my parents' house on the res, that it does feel really safe.
Yes.
And really, especially to talk about big topics like Indian residential school.
Gonna say,
This is the
that's
safe
enough.
place. Yeah, this is the
For
safe
one
place
book.
to talk about it. And so, yeah, so coming in and out of characters was a lot of fun. But I always gotta say, you gotta know how to come out.
Sure.
Come back out of your character and come back into who you are.
Yeah. Yeah, it strikes me, because you had mentioned this earlier too, that do you think some people are made uncomfortable by Native joy, or maybe they're so used to a certain type of narrative, which is just focusing on the suffering of Native communities? And do you think maybe that has played into, for example, that review, but also other perspectives?
I do. And that's why representation matters so much, because when I did read these stories from non-Native folks, even well-meaning non-Native folks who did the research and their professors in American Indian Studies, it's like, you just won't understand, because you don't come from that space and living it and breathing it each night, and why there is substance abuse and what does harm reduction look like. And how do we create safe spaces for everyone, not just people who are sober and cis and all these other things that decide you belong in this square so you can be safe. It's saying, we need to make a commitment to sharing who we are. And I think as writers, as artists, we all kind of have to reckon with that, how that looks. And I know that when people are used to seeing suffering, it is strange to not see it. And I'm like, come and, spend the day with us. And there's going to be fighting. There's going to definitely be suffering, but you're going to see how hard we work to combat that, to show that culture is for everyone. So when we do go to ceremony and traditional places, that we're not judging somebody who's never been to ceremony before by like, oh, so-and-so's never been here before, and I'm not going to tell them, let them figure it out. And somebody who's a traditionalist, who's done this their whole life, they can't be held on this pedestal. We are all in community. There's always something for everyone to learn. And so when we come from that space of respect and love, that is reflected into our writing and into our reading. And of course, we have to tell our stories. And I think that when you get to read a story or read a picture book, even better, and see the illustrations coming from that community, it really does open your heart and mind. And you have to be open to saying, is this Indigenous joy? And it's like, it's Indigenous joy for this person. Right. And we are happy to know that. And another illustrator might do it completely different. And we are all different, thank goodness. And it's a good thing. Yes. But yeah, it is. I did find a lot of not even people I would talk to in different book clubs. They would ask me about if I was going to incorporate drinking and parties and stuff, and I'm like, there's a place for it, and sure. I'm like, it's fine, but it's not my story to tell. Sure. And I hope others will pick up the pen or the typewriter or the laptop, and I hope that they will tell their story, because we need to hear from everyone. But I'm not going to kind of take that and feel like I need to do that as well. Right. I'm saying the quill is yours. Let's hear your story.
Right. Yeah. I think that's really important. And you also referenced that earlier when you pointed out natives are not a monolith. Mm-hmm. As a fellow Native myself, who's very city, I'm sure my experience is entirely different from yours. And I really appreciate you bringing up that point. On that note, I was wondering, because we all have such different experiences, even if we're, both Indigenous, is there ever a point where you felt, or do you think you would feel a need to use a sensitivity reader?
I feel like I do. Unfortunately, my husband.
Oh dear, unfortunately.
Yes, because I'm like, how much time do you have? And he's like, why? Well, if you have an hour, we can go through the whole book. If you have 5 minutes, let me give you a snapshot. So I love running things through my husband. I love running things through my mom and my dad. They're all very different. Like just them three is really, really, it's just fantastic to have them in my home. And then there's my children, and they are so exciting, because my son, he only likes to read nonfiction. And I'm like, how dare you? And so he brings this like realism, like, would that really happen? And he is skeptical. And then my eldest daughter is like, we're like on the same length. She's like a little 40-year-old woman. And I just love talking with her, that I have to remember that she's still a kid. And so I can't like take all her time, but man, do I love our drives to school in the morning. It takes 15 minutes, and I'll be like, so it's like 5:30 in the morning. And I'm like, I got this idea. This is it. You're mine for the next 15 minutes. And then there's my 13-year-old. And she is like a TikToker. She is going to be an excellent producer with her
Wow.
video editing skills. She is always on the up and up with hashtags, what's current and what's happening in the news and the media. And I love like getting up on I'm like, so what is the 411? You know, like she knows all. And then my youngest, who has this big heart, who is just always ready to listen, and his friends like mimic that. His little friends are so kind, and for a bunch of little rowdy boys who play in our backyard and destroy it, my gosh, they're just nice kids who are just kind to each other. And so when I get to talk with Victor, he just has this kindness that it helps to kind of weed through if especially if I'm going to make like a mean character. I'm like, unfortunate. I'm like, so what if this happened? And he'll be like, oh my gosh, why would you do that? And then my 13-year-old is like, more. I wouldn't care. And I'm like, yes, okay. And so these are my sensitivities. I love that. As I get to go through. I'm like, who today? And I make it like a whole, everybody knows my business, everybody knows what I'm doing. Otherwise it stays in my head and I'll be like, oh no, mom's working on something. Do you want to know? Do you have how much time do you
How
have?
much time?
Let me tell you if I can share it. So yeah, and I think that,
beautiful.
yeah, I love to. And that's the thing is that when I do share my projects,
Mhm.
like they follow up, you know,
Oh.
and they're like, how was that story? And how did that, you know, how are you doing with this? And how's your poetry? And I'm like, you know, and it keeps me, definitely keeps me balanced and rooted and real. Like my kids don't think I am super mom because when they read about how amazing I think my kids are and how capable they are, they realize that they also are multi-dimensional people and that mom sees us this way. And that doesn't mean that's the only way. And you see mom this way. That doesn't mean I'm only this one way. So it definitely lets them see how I see them and how I think they're so amazing, and they give back to me and say, this is how you're amazing in their little ways.
Of course.
They definitely don't verbalize that, but it's there. I feel it. Yes, of course.
That's adorable, using your kids as a sounding board. And then sort of I just love how they're sort of accompanying you on your writing and publishing journey, you know. I think that's really beautiful.
Thank you.
And so I think you already answered this, because I was gonna ask next how you balance writing with other challenges in your life, which includes, you know, day jobs, parenthood, etc. But maybe you wanted to speak to something besides motherhood.
Yeah, I mean, writing, I don't write all the time.
Okay.
I'm not very good at it, but I love to sketch and I like to paint, and I also make dolls and I do beadwork and I'm trying to learn how to knit. Yeah, there's just, I'm not all at the same time.
Okay, good.
But I sometimes when I do feel like this story is done, not like the end, maybe I'm stuck or somebody else has to come in or somebody comes bursting and throws down a map. When that person hasn't come into the story yet, I'm okay with putting away the story and not trying to finish it. And I'll take out my paints or I'll try to figure out knitting again in one skinny long scarf. Or we have so many Barbie scarves because I'm like, it gets this long and then it's a Barbie scarf again. Here we go. And yeah, so balancing it's for me, it's just all about am I enjoying myself? And if I'm not enjoying myself, then I'm saying what is making this not fun anymore? And I don't mean everything has to be a party. I just mean it is about balance. And sometimes when it feels like work, like, oh my goodness, this is used to be fun. Then we'll go for a bike ride or we'll go for a picnic or I'll help them with math. Not a big fan of math homework, but sometimes you just need to get outside of yourself and or sometimes I'll just lay in my kids' room and I'll be on their rug and they'll just be around me and I'll be like, sometimes we won't even talk. They'll just be like, oh, there's mom. They'll do their thing, and then I'm just like, you have the best room. And that's just, I'm like, I'm grounding myself. It's
Yes.
enough. And some days are like that, where I'm
Excellent.
just completely useless and person on their rug and looking at their glimpse of their life in that one moment. And sometimes that will spark something. And I'll be
Sure.
like, this is that, this is that character. And then sometimes, yeah, it is just you got to grind out that work. And if you have that motivation, get it all done. Do all the emails and all the work as much as you can get done, because you do need to have moments of rest. And if you try to have rest and work in one day, sometimes it doesn't balance out like that. So if today is like a full rest day, then take advantage of it, rest. If it's a full work day, then don't feel bad for working and working and working, and you're like, I got so much work done, but I don't think I rested. It's like, did you need to rest? Did you, was that fulfilling for you? Was that fun for you? Do you feel balanced? And if it's like, yeah, I actually feel really good, then don't feel bad. You feel bad for working, you feel bad for resting. It's
Yes.
finding that. And I feel like the teachings of our medicine wheel is that when you look at the medicine wheel, it's carved into quadrants. And you're not meant to stand in the center and be like on one foot trying to balance your social and emotional and spiritual and all of these quadrants. You're meant to see when something feels off, what am I neglecting? Or what am I, if painting is like all of a sudden this is work now. Okay, so maybe it's social. Maybe you go for a walk and connect with the earth again. Or maybe for us, it would be smudging. And it's not like completely unusual for even our kids to say, can we smudge? And we're like, yeah, we get sweetgrass and we smudge, and we don't say, why? What's wrong? Why do you want to smudge? It's like, yeah, we're doing that now. Somebody needs to fill their cup with this, and this is how we're doing that. And sometimes we recognize our own kids have their own cups to fill. And I like to stay home and like party with my Netflix and watch, junk food. And some kid will be like, let's go to the carnival. And I'm like,
Yeah.
and then we'll go and I'll have the best time. And so sometimes you do need to like get out of your comfort zone and go do something that brings somebody else joy, because you get joy too.
I love it. I love how you speak of balance. And my next question was going to be about advice you would give other authors. And you sort of touched on that already, but specifically for those who are feeling discouraged or intimidated by the publishing industry, authors who are just starting out, what advice would you give them other than, keep your balance, keep your cup full?
Yeah. I would say when you're writing, is this for like little you? Is this for the general community? Who are you writing to for? And how are you writing to them? And when you're writing, does this place come from like there's something sometimes when I'm writing, I go through these phases. And one phase is, this is the best thing. I hope the whole world reads this. This is like, nothing is better than this. And then this is the worst, the absolute worst. I'm ashamed I wrote it. I'm going to hide it. And if I don't go through the first phase into the second phase, I won't get to the third phase where this is not so bad. And so you have to keep trudging. And when you find your recipe of, maybe your recipe starts with, this is the worst, this is terrible. Keep going, because you don't know, that next ingredient might be chocolate, and then when you do that next thing and you're like, this is the best thing I've ever written. Okay, there's another, it's not going to end like that. And if you keep going, you get to the end and you get to experiencing it, like making your chocolate cake and eating it, or maybe it's just displaying it and watching others enjoy it. You're not going to get to that end finale unless you go through those and figure out what your recipe is as you move through it. And yes, you're an artist. You're gonna be crazy, and you're gonna have these days where you're like, I'm a fraud, and then I'm the best writer, Stephen King, you watch out. So you got to go through it. And it's, I mean, if you go through it with an open heart and an open mind, it's a lot more fun because then you're like, I'm wild, and you're just writing. You like, I'm so crazy right now. And I'm doing what you do. I actually note take before I type anything because I'm so tired of Grammarly coming in and recommending and I get so agitated by all of the AI suggestions that I was writing everything, typing everything and feeling 2026, but now I have my notebook again because it's too infuriating to have like bloop, 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 there's different recommendations. So now I'm back to writing, which is a good code because nobody can read it. It's the worst, right? Even I'll be like,
I know.
I'm like, what does this look like? It'll be like insane. So I'm like, no one's ever gonna stick to these ideas because they can't even read them.
Foolproof,
Yeah.
faith-proof.
So I'm like,
I love it.
good. We're coming back full
That's
circle.
awesome. All right, so I have one more question, and then I think if you're okay with it, we'll open it to questions from our attendees. And so you kind of alluded to projects that you have in the works right now. Would you mind telling us what they are, you know, what's next for you?
Yeah, so in the writing world, I have a new picture book out called Where the Wind Blows, and that comes out spring 2027. Steph Littlebird is my illustrator. She just finished releasing her own debut picture book, like that she wrote and illustrated, called We Are the Land. So she's amazing. After that, I'm super excited about Life is a Dance, which will come out probably that following winter. And Kelsey Mata Foot is my illustrator. And the really special thing about that is Life is a Dance is the like traditionally published version of my very first self-published book called When We Dance. And so we had to change the name because somebody else came out with another book called When We Dance. So Life is a Dance, and Kelsey is just brilliant. She just brought the characters to life. Where the Wind Blows is actually our road trip from Arizona to Canada that we take every summer. It's like if you were the wind and you were not following us in the car, but following us just on the land and going through, and you get to see different Indigenous nations and homes that are modern today. Because our number one question I'm always asked is, do you still live in a teepee? And I'm like,
Oh, jeez.
So I'm like, we do have traditional dwellings. We do. We still use them. Like the Wickiup with the Apache, like the Hogan with the Navajo. So I incorporated that in the picture book. So you can see traditional homes, but you'll also see the modern homes in the background. You'll see a powwow moment where people are like in jeans and the regalia. So that one's just going to be really beautiful. That's actually the picture book that I first gave to my editor, and I was like, this is the best. You know, I was in my like, this is the best story
Yes,
you'll ever
that's
read.
the mode you want.
Yeah. And then my editor said, this is fantastic. What else do you have? And I was not expecting that. And I'm like, and I'm like, I have this. And I sent that to her and she's like, great, what else? I'm like, oh my gosh. So then I started giving her some of my self-published stuff. And I'm like, I got this. And she's like, okay, this is good. Okay, 1, 2, 3, let's get to work on these. And I mean, that was in 2020. It's 2026. So long. And it's not coming out to 2027. So the traditionally published world takes a zillion years. Self-published, I had it out like in a year. So you know, there's your pros and cons right there if you want to see your book in this lifetime. And then this one I wrote in 2021 and it was released 2024. And like it was like to notebook 2021. And then yeah, we just went for it. So you know, publishing world is wild. But yeah, so a lot of good stuff. And then in the non-literary world, I'm working on my little girl's beaded cape right now. And I'm really happy about that. And then there's like an animated series that we're like just on the horizon of that might follow my youngest Victor, his life. So it has some traditional storytelling. So I mean, do all the things while you have the time.
Right.
And when, you know, especially if opportunity arrives, you have to be ready. Like when I did land my editor and I thought this was the best picture book, this will seal the deal. And she's like, sealed, what else? So, have your stuff.
Next.
Like, yeah, and you just never know. It was actually in November that I'm like, I'm just going to put together an animated series for fun. And I was writing while on the airplane. And then January comes along and someone's like, do you by any chance have an animated series idea? I'm like, what the?
Whoa.
Yeah, whether I manifested it or, I mean, I have a ton of half completed project. I'm like, can you manifest knitting Barbies? I have a lot. So I'm like, there's just, yeah, if you have it, it doesn't always need a plan. If you have that creative moment on a random Tuesday, just try it out. You just never know, whether it's painting, beadwork, writing an animated series that like, what if, I think it's all just, that's what life is about. It's just having fun and really enjoying the ride.
So you've had a great ride. We'll continue. Yeah. Excellent. Well, let's see, we have about 10 minutes left. So I think if anyone would like to ask any questions here in the room or virtually, go ahead and now's your chance. Let's see. Oh, we have one chat. Rita says she just finished Buffalo Dreamer and loved it. Great job.
Thank you so much, Rita.
All right. Anyone else? Bernard, would you like to speak?
Where do you find the most responsive audiences for your work?
I've always preferred working with kids grade 6 and younger. Those are my people. They are just hilarious to me. And it's not just their honesty. It's the fact that they can just sniff out if you're being phony or fake. And they're like, something's off with this adult. And so I can't even be like a very important author. I'm just me. And when I come as myself, I think that the opportunity to meet each other is way more better, informative, relaxed. And so those are my jam. Grade 7 and up, they scare me. Junior high, that's where my daughter, the rest of my kids are now. Yeah, those guys, some of them are just so intelligent and they got their whole life together. And some of them are just like bobbing around. And I'm like, I'm afraid of you guys, but the world is yours. So I'll just watch, see what happens. But yeah, grade 6 and under, like all the way pre-K, grade 6, those are my folks.
Okay.
Nice.
I've got a question. Do you do anything like on social media, like marketing wise, or like how useful do you find that kind of stuff?
So when I am not busy, my social media looks amazing because I have like time and people are like, you're so busy. And I'm like, that's because I'm doing nothing right now. When I'm quiet, I'm so big. And it's not just me. All of a sudden, my kids have like lives where they're musicians and athletes and friends and little counselors to their friends. And so I want to support them because they're only going to be little for so long. But yeah, now I know what my mom was talking about: chauffeur, chef, caretaker, bestie. I'm like, you guys are way busier than I ever was at your age. And I'm proud of them. I mean, my one kid is the president of the Native Club, and my other kid, he was in basketball, football, he's in track now, and then he's going to be joining some other sport that I have to learn the terminology. So he was like a cornerback, and I had to Google what that was and how dangerous that was. And so, yeah, when I'm quiet on social media, I don't want to be, but that means my kids have taken over my life and I'm barely above water.
Yes.
I vow to be better. I mean, I'm really, really trying.
Many of your kids followed in the theater?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, definitely. My eldest was in Cats. Aristocats, not the cat.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
yes.
She was in Aristocats in grade 6. But she is or actually they are in orchestra. And so they are learning about all of the different concertos, and they like to tell me stories. And then my youngest is right into Greek mythology right now. And so, yeah, so passionate about it. And their stories are
phase.
terrifying. Yes,
Yeah.
oh my goodness. And so we are a performing arts company. So we do our performances, which is just traditional dance, music, and storytelling. But on top of that, my eldest is a writer, and her stuff is not like my stuff. Her stuff is like, it's just brilliant. I hope that they continue writing, because what I've written so far, what they've let me, is just incredible. And then my other one, like I said, she's like a producer, you know, she knows how to piece together stories. So it's the arts, but it's TikTok is, it looks effortless, like I could do that. But all the little, you know, stopping, freezing, going back to your spot. I'm like, these kids these days are, yeah, it's really exciting.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're all like, whether they don't want to be or not, the arts is definitely, I think, what our foundation is on.
I love that. So what was a question?
Oh, yes. Let's see. How do I go up on
You
this?
just scroll with 2 fingers.
Sorry, I'm not a Mac person. Apple, yeah. Do you know how to do it? Thank you. Okay, Rita asks, in Buffalo Dreamer, question about real life inspiring fiction. Did you or a family member actually dream of a residential school survivor, and then the survivor dream of the child?
So I didn't. I do strongly believe in dreams, though. The reason for that is when 2006 in September, I was Miss Indian World, which is a big pageant in Indian country. And I was so stressed out and busy and trying to fulfill all my pageant duties. But I had this dream where I was dancing in this courtyard, and I could see the fringe of my shawl, and I knew I wasn't wearing the crown. And I was like, this is such a beautiful dream. But then I had it again. And then I had it again. And then I was with my mom, and it was late November, and I had the dream the night before, and we were at a hotel. And I was talking to her on the bed, and she was getting ready in the bathroom. And I was telling her about my dream. And she said, well, we're like, where are you? And I'm like, I don't know. It's like a cobblestone courtyard. And then just then I looked at the TV, and there was the courtyard, and it said, visit Italy. And I was like, oh my goodness, I think I have to go to Italy. And my mom said, okay, well, we'll write a grant and go. And I said, no, 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 I'm alone in my dream. I think I have to be alone. And she goes, how do you think you'll get there? I'm like, I don't know. We'll figure it out. And then the next month comes, and we're performing as a family. And this other performer next door to us bursts into our change room and says, can anybody come to Italy? And I was like, I'll go. And he goes, great. And he shuts the door, and I was like, who was that? And it was the dad of the group beside us, and him and my dad had already bonded. And so my dad was like, they seem like a cool family. I say to go. And I'm like, yeah, I got to get there somehow.
Wow.
And then my dad and his dad was like, you know, my daughter is single. And his dad's like, my son is single. And I'm like, we're not doing that. An adult. We're not having that. But I go 3 months later. I'm not the princess anymore. And I go on this tour, and yes, his son was brilliant. He's an incredible musician, and he just totally knocked me off my heels. And we were like having pizza at night and walking, and I never found the courtyard, by the way. So that it did not fulfill itself. But when I was talking to my mom would say, did you dance at the courtyard? And did you see your friends? And I'm like, not yet, not yet. But Tony is so funny, and he's so amazing. And my mom's like, who? Okay. Anyway, tell me when you get to this courtyard. And so we fly back, and all I can talk about is how amazing Tony is. And my mom's like, I think we know the reason why you had to go. And that's my husband.
Of course.
And so then I came to Arizona, and I'm like, I live here now. I'm going to join you. And yeah, so my dad and his dad still feel like it was them. They were like, we did that. And I'm like, sure, Dad.
No.
He didn't know about the dream. No, only my mom. Yeah. So, but yeah, my dad was like, good thing I told them that you should go to Italy. And I'm like, not really. Like, I would have gone if my dad was like, they gotta. I'm like, no. But yeah, then that, so I do believe in listening to your dreams and following your dreams. And there's actually a traditional story about a young woman dreaming of her brothers, and it's kind of how the Big Dipper came to be, the seven stars.
Yeah.
And so I do believe in that. So writing Buffalo Dreamer, I did want to make sure that we didn't experience residential school, because my aunties and uncles who went through it, they already experienced that. And I did not want to traumatize them through going through that experience again. And there's other books. There's a ton of picture books in middle grade and beyond about the Indian residential school that you can get an idea, and film about Indian residential schools. But I wanted my aunties and uncles to read this and feel safe. And so in the blizzard, the young girl is running away. My Auntie Daisy ran away in the middle of a blizzard. And I always thought of, what if she got away? What if she made it? But she didn't. She got too hungry. She was gone for too long. Nobody noticed. She ended up coming back, and she was frozen and frostbitten and starving, and no one even noticed that she was gone. And she tells us that story. And I thought, what if she made it that first night to that one place? And what if somebody was able to save her and keep her? And I always wondered, and I know she did too. And so this was like a story for her of like, what if, because she is now like the language keeper. She spoke Cree, and then it was taken away from her during residential school. And now as a grandmother, she is dedicated to learning the Cree language, and she has her master's in the Cree language. So this was like a love story to my dad and to my aunties, not saying, let's relive this terrible experience of your life, but how much you lift us up as the next generation,
Right.
that we are all the better because of the sacrifice that you had to do to keep culture, to keep tradition, to keep language, and to keep love. Because it's hard to have such a terrible childhood and not be just like there's such good loving people that I'm like, I don't know if I would be the same. You know, I imagine I would be so mean and so bitter, and I would have good reason, and I see them and their joy, and I'm like, how did you do this? You know, yeah. And they always say, for you. You know, my auntie says, for you, for my cousin Jolene, her daughter, for her grandchildren, I'm doing this for you. And that is like so huge that I'm like, I wrote this for you. I want to show you that your efforts are not in vain, that we are so grateful for how they continue to lift us up when I want them to be lifted up. And they're like, no, you.
I would say too, that you're part of that tradition now too, with your book, and passing it on to the future, not just your children, but your children's children's, and maybe all children.
Thank
So,
you.
Yeah.
I'm excited. Actually the paper book,
Mhm.
the paperback copy
Paperback.
that's coming out soon. It's going to have the timeline of Indian residential schools. The big question I get asked is, why did I write it? I wrote a why did I write it? And we learn a little bit about the characters and who they are, like compared to in my family. And so I'm really, really excited about the paper book coming out. Because a lot of people had questions about what, like, this is some of their very first time hearing about Indian residential schools. And for me, yeah, I didn't learn it until university. And so I wanted to make sure that we are going fully, like we have a timeline there. We have, what is the sonar? What is that? Anyways, who created that? And is it accurate? It's all in the paperback. So,
Excellent.
yeah, I'm really happy about
That's
that.
fantastic.
To it. And do you know the date when that's?
Okay, that's okay. Probably this summer. I sent the last thing was December.
Okay.
So I think
We'll
it's
keep an eye
gonna
out
be
then.
soon.
Yeah. And excellent. Well, thank you very much. I have one more. Ask if it's okay. Do you mind if we take a quick picture?
Yeah.
Yeah. Should I
Mind at all.
stop the recording?
Yes, we're gonna stop the recording. Thank you
Yes.
so much for being on.
Thank you, guys. It was good to see you. Where do I go?
Just click off.
This right here.
Bye, Hida.
Yay,
Thank you for your
for
question.
coming. Oh.
End meeting.